Hey, this is Leo for Actualized.org. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the meditation technique called strong determination sitting. And I'm going to show you how to use this one technique to supercharge your existing meditation practice. Let's talk about strong determination sitting. This is a technique that's very, very simple, but also incredibly powerful if you can apply it in your life. And I'm going to show you exactly how to apply it right here. I learned this technique from Shinzen Young, who's a Zen master, but he's a very interesting Zen master because he's a Westerner, and he, in the 1960s and 70s, he went to Japan and he actually became an ordained Buddhist monk, and he was in the Zen monasteries and he learned everything there. And then also what he did is he started studying enlightenment and other spiritual traditions around the whole world, and he basically came up with this model for mindfulness, which was just amazing. You can go learn it from him. But anyways, what I want to talk about here is this strong determination sitting, which I learned from him, and he's a big proponent of this. In fact, the whole Zen tradition is a big proponent of strong determination sitting. What I love about this technique is that it shows you just how weak our minds are in Western cultures. So in cultures that don't have any strong spiritual or meditation traditions, so basically cultures outside of like China, India, Nepal, Japan, and Southeast Asia, where meditation is very seriously practiced, cultures outside of that generally are extremely ignorant about what's possible with the human mind, what's possible with human consciousness. It's incredible. And Shinzen Young, he likes to talk about the marathon monks. And there was actually a book written about this in the late 80s. It's called The Marathon Monks of Mount Hiei. And this is just incredible what these monks can do. These monks have endurance beyond what you would think is humanly possible. What these monks do is that they isolate themselves for a period of 12 years on this cold mountain near Kyoto. It's called Mount Hiei. This is a process that you enter into, and you make a lifelong vow of like celibacy. So you abstain from sex and you abstain from drinking and all that kind of stuff. But that's just the beginning of it. They enter this for 12 years. For 12 years, they live on that mountain and they have pretty much no contact with anybody else. And all they do is they train hardcore Zen Buddhism. And the things that these monks go through as a training process is incredible. The way that it works is that every year that they're on that mountain, they have a 100-day cycle per year. And what they have to do is they have to make a journey all the way down the mountain. They have to walk or run down the mountain in these straw wooden sandals that they're wearing. They walk for 30 to 60 kilometers in one day, down the mountain and then through the city and into the temples. And then they make like offerings in the temples. And as they're doing all this, they have to be meditating towards enlightenment the whole time. And then they make that round trip down and then up the mountain. They have to do this in one day. They have to walk like 30 to 60 kilometers. It takes them like 20 hours to do this walk. As they're walking, they're not eating, they're not drinking, they're not resting, they're not sleeping. They're in a meditative enlightenment like trance the whole way. Now that's one day. They do that for 100 days in a row. And then they do that each year. And then like during one of the years, they have to do it, I think, for like 200 days. And they're doing like 60 kilometers per day. It's incredible. It's a feat that like trained professional athletes could not accomplish. It's more than running one marathon, except they do it 100 times in a row. And sometimes they do a double marathon. Not only that, but then what else they have during these years is they have these sits where they have to sit. And what they have to do is they have to sit motionless while they're reciting a mantra and they're meditating. And they have to sit there and they have two monks who are sitting next to the one monk who's doing this process, right? And they watch him. And he has to sit there. He can't eat, sleep, drink water, or move for 7.5 days. Imagine that. How long do we think we need water before we die? 3 days, 4 days? That's usually what they tell you in the books. These monks can sit for 7.5 days without water, without sleep, and without food, and basically without motion. They get up once at 2 a.m. per day in order to travel 200 meters to make some sort of ritual offering of water somewhere in the fountain. And then they come back and they sit back down. And then two monks sit there and make sure that this monk is not falling asleep during this process. Not only do they do that, but they're not sitting there and like grinding through this, but they're actually sitting there with a smile on their face and enjoying this process because they're completely in this otherworldly enlightenment trance. They're just trained so rigorously for this. They do this for 12 years. Not only that, but as they're making that walk down and up the mountain for 100 days, they are given a knife, a small knife that they carry with them. And if ever they should get the urge to quit or to stop this walk, then they're supposed to cut themselves open and kill themselves. So those are the marathon monks. Now, what I like about hearing these kinds of stories is it's like, holy fuck. Like, first of all, it's incredible that that's even physically and medically possible to do for a human body. You would think it pushes the limits of what science tells us we can do. By the way, you can actually watch monks performing this ritual of sitting for 7.5 days. So it's not just like some tall tale that they tell you. Like sometimes they'll tell you some, tall tales about spiritual things that people have done, like yogis have done this or done that. No, this is actually a public process. You can actually watch them doing this. So it's not just a tall tale. But what's great about these kinds of stories is it tells you about, how serious you can be about this process of enlightenment, also how serious you can be about meditation, and how far that can take you. So let's talk about strong determination sitting. What is this? Well, it's not quite as intense as what these monks do, but it's a little bit towards the intense side of what you can do with meditation. And this right here can be a fast track path towards enlightenment, if you're really interested in that. And, before, in my previous episodes, I've talked about how you can reach enlightenment through something called self-inquiry, or what I call the looking process. And I've done other videos on other meditation techniques. But here, Shinzen Young told me that this might be the most quickest way that he knows for how to get to enlightenment. It's strong determination sitting. Here's the technique, very simple. You get a timer, you set it for something like 1 or 2 hours or more. You need a long chunk of time. You sit in a lotus-like position, full lotus, half lotus, whatever, kind of legs crossed. Or, if you're just starting this process and you haven't gotten used to sitting cross-legged, then you just might want to sit in a chair. That works as well. And you're sitting with your eyes open. Take 1 or 2 minutes now to adjust yourself in your seat. Just get into your kind of meditative bubble so that you're sitting there like, okay, now I'm going to do meditation. All right. And then what you do is you do not move for the full length of your meditation. You don't move at all. You don't move to reposition yourself. You don't move to scratch an itch on your face. You don't move to adjust your back if it gets tired. You don't move if your legs fall asleep. You don't move if you're in excruciating pain. You don't move if you're about to claw your eyes out from boredom or from anxiety or from frustration or from any physical ailments that your body is producing. And if you ever try anything even close to this, what you're going to realize is just how incredibly difficult this is of a meditation. So what you have to do is you have to sit there. You sit there for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, completely motionless for as long as you can. And that's the entire meditation. Pretty intense stuff. If you've never even tried this before, I really encourage you to try it at least once in your life, just to see what the hell I'm talking about here. Just to see what these monks are doing and what they're putting themselves through. Because what you're going to discover very quickly if you try this even once is that you can't even do 30 minutes of it. Let alone an hour. You can't do an hour at all. 2 hours? Inconceivable that you could do 2 hours of this without training. 4 hours? That's like flying to the moon. It's just crazy. The furthest that I've been able to go, and I've been meditating for 2.5 years now, consistently, and I've been meditating for 1 hour a day. And the most that I can do, that I've ever done so far with strong determination sitting, is 90 minutes straight. And I actually did that just the other week. And it was an amazing 90 minutes. Let me tell you, the amount of concentration and calmness of mind and focus that you get when you sit perfectly motionless and still for 90 whole minutes, and you sit through all the aches and pains and itches and scratches and all the boredom and all the tediousness and all that crap, you sit through all that, man, it's like you go into a totally different world. It's incredible. Especially if you couple this technique with some of the other techniques that I've showed you. For example, if you're doing the self-inquiry process and you're investigating who it is that you actually are and you're looking into that, well, try doing that also while you're sitting there perfectly motionless and you're doing the strong determination sit. Or also what you can do is you can combine this technique here with the technique that I also described called do nothing, so that you're sitting there and you're practicing do nothing, but you're sitting perfectly motionless and you're sitting for a very long period of time. So I don't mean just do nothing for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. For a strong determination sit, you need at least an hour as your goal. And then try 90 minutes, try 2 hours, and just try pushing and just see how difficult it really is. It's almost unimaginable before you try this, just how difficult it really is. And that's one of the things that I really love about this technique, is because it shows you just how rotten your mind has become. Just how low we set the bar in Western societies and cultures. Like, we really set the bar so fucking low for our minds and for our consciousness that it's really pathetic. Your mind has just been completely rotted away by modern culture, by television, by internet, by your smartphone, by your friends, by the way you do business, by your career, by your family, by all of that. And shows you that there's something deeply flawed within you if you cannot sit still, perfectly still, for just 1 hour. And you're going to notice real quick that there's something wrong with you. What you're going to see is that actually you're incapable of being happy. I've talked about this before in some of my other videos about happiness. Deep and true happiness, the true meaning of happiness, is not what we in the West think of it as. It's not entertainment. That's not happiness. It's not stimulation, and it's not excitement. And it's not love. What it is it's complete presence in the moment right now. It's being one with reality. It's being able to be calm and peaceful with no matter what is happening with your body or with your mind or with the circumstances around you. So it's complete unconditional happiness. And this is the kind of happiness that very few people have ever tasted. And this is true happiness. We've really done a disservice to the word happiness by using it for all sorts of crap that's not true happiness. And since the whole objective of your life and everything you do in your life is basically to make yourself happy, that's why you do everything you do. There's nothing in your life that you do that you don't think will make you happy. So if that's true, and it is, but yet you're unhappy all the time, and you are, I guarantee that you are. And how can we prove this? Well, by having you sit for 1 hour. Can you sit for 1 hour motionless and be happy at the same time? If you can't, you might think like, well, Leo, that's just That's just some stupid monk stuff. Like they just sit there and they train their whole lives, and that's very extreme. They're torturing themselves. And what does this have to do with happiness? It has nothing to do with happiness. Actually, it has everything to do with happiness. Because on a very deep level, what these monks are doing is they're training themselves to be completely at ease and non-resistant to what's happening in the present moment, no matter what that is. Now, sometimes that's a very positive thing, and you can easily be happy with something very positive. If I give you $100,000 tomorrow, then you're going to be very happy. Just naturally, it's easy to be happy when you have, someone hand you a huge batch of money. But how are you going to feel when your ass hurts? How are you going to feel when you have an ache in your back? How are you going to feel when you have arthritis? How are you going to feel when your cat dies? How are you going to feel when your kid breaks his leg? How are you going to feel when your girlfriend or boyfriend leaves you for somebody more attractive than you? How are you going to feel when you lose your job? How are you going to feel when your business collapses with the bad turn in the economy? How are you going to feel when your competitors outcompete you? How are you going to feel when you're working on that project and then your computer crashes and you lose all the data on your hard drive that you've been working on for 2 years? How are you going to feel then? Happy? Probably not. One of the secrets to life is to train yourself to be happy in the moment, regardless of anything else. And this is a discipline, and this is a training. And this is basically what the aim of all meditation is. Someone once asked me in a comment under one of my videos, he said something like, Leo, what's the goal and objective of meditation? And that was an interesting question, because there's different ways you could answer that. And I thought about that, and I was asking myself, like, well, yeah, that's a good question. What is the essence of meditation, really? I mean, why are we sitting down and doing this thing of just removing ourselves from the world and focusing our minds and clearing our minds of thoughts? Why are we doing all this? And the aim of it is, my answer is that you want to merge with reality. To me, that's the essence of meditation. It's merging into reality. It's kind of a funny answer. What does it mean to merge into reality? Sounds mystical. Sounds weird. Well, when you start studying enlightenment, what you start discovering is that actually that's a real possibility, is for you to merge with reality. And I'm not going to go into the depth of all the details that are involved with that. Just wanted to kind of share that insight with you, but also to connect it with happiness, right? Because when you're totally merged with reality, the funny thing is that you become completely happy. Levels of happiness are possible that you have never experienced in your life. You can just get 30 seconds of this kind of happiness, and it's not just happiness, it's bliss. It's pure bliss. I've been lucky to just get like a little hit of it here and there in my meditation practice. Man, this is not something you've ever felt. This is not something that an ordinary human being has ever felt. This is why people become monks. You might wonder, like, well, why become a monk? Why renounce sex and alcohol and all this and live on a cold-ass mountain for 12 years and like be beaten with sticks and go through these crazy ordeals? Why do all that? Because counterintuitively, that makes you the happiest human being you can possibly be. Now, that's fucked up. But what's even more fucked up is that that's true. And what I encourage you to do is I encourage you to reconcile that with your Western worldview. Because your Western worldview does not admit of this truth. It does not admit of this truth that, oh shit, these people who are monks, they're actually onto something. These people who meditate really hardcore, they're actually happy human beings. They're not neurotic human beings like most of us are. I mean, sure, they're not perfect. They've got their issues, granted, but they're doing this for happiness. Now, you might say, well, Leo, that's a crazy way to go about getting happiness. Well, they could say the same thing about what you're doing. And you know what? They're going to be more right. Because if we take a look at your life, what are you doing to get happiness? What have you been doing for the last 20 years in your life to get happiness? And how well has it been working? Can you sit for an hour and be happy? If you can't sit for an hour and just be happy with whatever is going on, and if you go into monkey mind and you start getting neurotic and crazy and your face starts itching and you want to claw your eyes out, well, that just shows you what psychological state you're in. That kind of psyche can never be happy. And so you wonder, well, why am I depressed? And why am I always anxious? And why do I worry? And why do I have fears? And why does that job that I got didn't make me happy? What about that money? I got that money and that didn't make me happy. I bought a new house. That didn't make me happy. My girlfriend doesn't make me happy. My husband doesn't make me happy. My kids are supposed to make me happy, but they don't really make me happy. Why is that? Well, I would submit to you that it's because you have a rotten mind, you have a rotten psyche, and that really what you are is you're a soft, lazy twat, is what you are. Here's a cool thing that I learned from Shinzen Young also, is that if you can sit and be calm and happy, this is actually a really good litmus test for enlightenment. People sometimes ask me also in the comment sections like, well, Leo, how can you prove that someone is enlightened? And while you can't conclusively prove that someone is enlightened because it's an inner realization, an inner state, and until you can go into someone's mind, you can't really prove it because you're not them. But what you can do is you can just give them a simple test. If you're enlightened, you should be able to sit at ease for 4 hours, no problem. Can you do that? Try it yourself. Try it tonight. Set aside an hour and just see, can you sit even for 1 hour and just be happy? And not need to move, not need to scratch yourself, not need to think about anything, just sit there and be happy. What you're going to notice is that you can't. Not even close. Like not even 1%. In the first 5 minutes, you're already going to be trying to claw your eyes out. That's what the average Westerner will notice. This is a very sobering realization, which is why I want you to actually try this at least once in your life, even if you don't turn it into a habit. Try it at least once, just to see how bad you are. And just to get your mind to start to have to reconcile this fact that like, holy shit, I've really let my mind rot away. There's something wrong with that. And if what I'm trying to do in my whole life is trying to pursue happiness and I haven't gotten it, could it possibly be that the techniques and strategies that I've been employing up till now will never, ever, ever work? Because I can't even sit and be at peace for 1 hour doing nothing. Now, this might seem like self-torture. If you sit down and you actually do this practice, what you might discover is like, holy shit, this is like torturing yourself. Leo, why are you making me torture myself? I don't like this. I want nice and comfy meditation. It's not torturing you. What it's actually doing is it's forcing your mind to reconcile to the absolute present moment, which is reality. You understand that reality is what's happening in the present moment right now? Reality is like this flowing concert. It's always changing, it's always shifting. The problem, fundamental problem of the human psyche is that it resists this flowing reality. What it does is it tries to cling and hold on to various facets of reality, and it tries to hold it so that it doesn't change and flow away. We do this with our family, we do this with our career, we do this in business, we do this with everything. And in fact, we do it as we're sitting in a chair, just trying to enjoy the present moment. We do it, right? Because what happens, like an itch goes on your face, and then you want to scratch that itch. Already, you wanting to scratch that itch is you resisting reality. Now, what happens if you prohibit yourself, hold yourself back from scratching that itch? Well, actually, what this does is it seems like it's maybe self-torture, or it seems like it's just some sort of like, harsh discipline that a monk would use for who knows what kind of silly religious purposes. That's not what it really is, though. You have to understand why they do this. They do this because they've discovered a very powerful law of the psyche And this is also something that I learned from Shinzen Young. And this law is like a formula. And what it says is the following. There's multiple facets to this formula, but one formulation of it is like this. Purification equals pain multiplied by mindfulness. Purification equals pain multiplied by mindfulness. What is purification? Purification is the purification of your subconscious mind and your psyche. See, your subconscious mind is filled with a bunch of garbage. And from your very birth, it's been resisting the present moment. That's basically what your life has been as an adult, as a teenager and an adult, is moving away from the present moment into your fantasy land. And that's where you presently live. Because if the mind goes into fantasy land, then it doesn't have to be in reality. And when you force the mind to actually be in touch with what's happening in the present moment, with reality, it doesn't like this because it finds the fantasy land so much more comfortable. So one way to actually purify your subconscious mind is to endure pain. And as you endure the pain and you apply mindfulness to the pain, and you don't try to run away from the pain, but you kind of surrender to the pain, then what you find is that it purifies your mind. And purification here is not in some sort of like moral sense. It's in a very like almost physical sense, because your mind is this complex cybernetic system with a lot of feedback loops in it and triggers. What has to happen, and what does happen with meditation, is that the mind is forced to sit still. And as it does that, the brain waves in your mind have to go from very fast to slower and slower and slower, so your mind calms down, gets in touch with the present moment. For this to happen, the psyche has to purge material. And basically what's happening when you meditate is it's like psychotherapy, but not on a macro level, but on a micro level. So what is psychotherapy? Psychotherapy is basically you go into an office and you talk about some crap that happened to you in your past. Maybe your mom was mean to you when you were a kid. So you talk about it, you get it out of your system. You have an emotional release, a catharsis. The therapist just kind of hears you out and gives you some encouragement. And then what happens is that the next day you feel better. You feel lighter because you got that shit, which was stuck in the back of your mind. You got it out. And then maybe you get enough of it out that you don't even have to think about it anymore. And you're just kind of calm and cool with it. Well, that's exactly what meditation does, except on a micro level. Not with like a big event in the past, like your mom being mean to you. Now it's in the present moment. It forces your mind to actually just release and surrender itself to the present moment, which your mind is very subtly resisting 100 or 1,000 times a day. You don't even notice how much your mind resists the present moment until you start practicing some more meditation. So I encourage you to change your opinions about how you view monks, how you view some of these hardcore spiritual disciplines. They're really not religious disciplines. They're psychological disciplines. The reason that people take their spirituality so seriously in the Eastern world is because they've actually developed techniques that are more effective than psychotherapy in the West. And these techniques purify the subconscious mind in very powerful and profound ways. And this is nothing hokey or new age. You can actually try this yourself tonight. You can try it for a month, and you'll see that it has very practical, powerful effects. It calms your mind down. It makes you happier, which is what you've been wanting in your whole life all this time, except you didn't really know a real legitimate technique that would get you there. Well, here it is. I'm presenting it to you. So, purification is mindfulness, pain times mindfulness. Also, what you notice is that suffering is pain times resistance. So the amount of suffering you have in your life depends not just on the pain you have, but actually on how much you resist the pain. If you're able to drop your resistance to zero, in a very incredible and unbelievable way, what happens is that your pain drops to zero. Now you might say, Leo, well, what about, if I break my leg or my tooth hurts? I mean, are you saying that that pain isn't real? Well, let me just tell you a little anecdote that Peter Ralston told me when I was at his workshop. And Peter Ralston's a very enlightened guy, a really hardcore enlightened guy. He's been doing this for like 40 years. He's been enlightened since his 20s, and he's just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper with it. What he tells us as we're sitting there, he says, well, one time what I decided to do is I decided to go to the dentist and get a root canal. But I told the dentist not to use any Novocaine as he was about to drill and extract my root. You understand what a root canal is? If you've ever had a root canal, it's probably, even with Novocaine, it's the most disturbing process. I've had one done. What they do is they drill your tooth, but they don't just drill like a cavity. They drill all the way down through the root. And then what they do is they take pliers and they pull the root out of your tooth. They yank the whole root out. And then they kind of numb down, kind of grind down your whole tooth, and they put a crown on it. That's a root canal. He had this done with no Novocaine. Now, he told us that the dentist thought that Ralston was trying to be like macho, and that he was trying to sit there and just kind of like prove his macho-ness. But that's not what was happening. What was happening was that he sat there with like a smile on his face as this was happening. He wasn't holding in the pain and coping with the suffering. What he did is he actually eliminated the suffering and the pain entirely, sheerly through mindfulness. Imagine having such a clear perception of the present moment that what you or I would normally call physical pain, excruciating physical pain, ceases to be excruciating physical pain because you become that pain so completely and thoroughly that you understand what it really is as a phenomenon. No worse and no different than any other phenomenon. No different than the pressure of your ass sitting on your seat, which feels kind of comfy, right? Well, imagine that applied to a root canal. People sometimes ask me like, well, Leo, enlightenment, like you're talking about enlightenment. What does enlightenment really mean? Can we even measure it? It seems like just some philosophy or some, religious doctrine, some belief system. But see, no, it's none of that. What it is it's the ability to be fully present in the moment without resisting it. It's the ability to have a complete experience of reality without a self, because there is no self experiencing reality. There is just reality being. Reality just being. So one, way that you can test if you're enlightened is go get a root canal without Novocaine. Can you do it? It shows you how enlightened you are. See, there's not just one enlightenment. There's actually degrees of enlightenment. There's degrees of mindfulness. And what's really incredible is just how far you can take your mindfulness. You think if you've been practicing mindfulness for a few years that you've kind of like made some big gains? Nah. Try getting enlightened and then practicing mindfulness and getting further enlightenments for 40 fucking years. And then see where you are and what you can do. It's incredible what some of these people can practically do. See if you can sit there for 4 hours. See if you can sit there for 8 hours. An enlightened person really should have no problem sitting there for 8 hours without motion. It just shows you how out of touch you are with reality. It's very sobering. Very sobering. Completely changes your relationship to pain and to suffering, which is actually a very important facet of spiritual work. Because you know what? How can you be happy if you can't tolerate pain and suffering? You actually can't, because what's going to be happening is you're going to be running away all the time. You're going to be in fear all the time. Why do you think you're anxious all the time? It's because you fear suffering and pain. It's because you're trying to run away from it, and you are not able to surrender yourself to it. What's incredible is that these people can not only do these amazing feats of just sitting there or getting a root canal or something like that, but they can do it with a smile on their face. They're actually happy with it. It's not like you would do it. Like if I tell you to sit there for an hour, maybe you'll sit there for an hour, but what'll happen to you is you'll be like grinding your teeth the whole time, and you'll be like enduring it. You're going to be about to scream at the top of your lungs. Maybe you'll make it. But that's not what these people are doing. These people are sitting there and they're not feeling the pain or the suffering. Because what happens is that when you can reduce your resistance to zero, the suffering actually disappears and it turns into pleasure. And this is something that I want you to experience with this technique of strong determination sitting. So your assignment is to sit for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4, however long you want to test yourself with. Sit there and you're going to have physical pains and discomforts. Your legs are going to fall asleep. It's going to be miserable. It's going to be the worst experience of your life. And your job is to sit there through all that suffering and all that pain. And what you can do is you can achieve this moment where you actually have this breakthrough, where you have this intense suffering. And then what happens is that just instantaneously the suffering completely releases because your ego stops resisting. And this is a very magical moment if you can reach this moment with your sit. Because for the first time perhaps in your life, you'll get a new appreciation and a new understanding of how pain and suffering function. They don't function the way we typically think that they function. The Western notions of pain and suffering are completely just factually false, really. Factually false. So that's your job, is to sit there and endure that. And you know what? If your legs fall asleep and you're afraid that that's going to hurt you somehow, just remember the monks who sit for 7.5 days without food, without water, without sleep, without moving. What the human body and the human mind can do is incredible. And it just shows you how low we set the bar for ourselves as non-meditators, extremely low. So this practice here will show you just how low your bar is set. And maybe it'll convince you that, hey, maybe my life would go better if I raised the bar a few notches. You know, I'm probably not going to go become a marathon monk, but if I can just train myself maybe to sit for 2 hours every day in silence without moving and being happy, if I can reach that state, maybe that might have some extraordinary and profound ramifications for the quality of my life. Maybe that's more worthwhile to pursue than pursuing that promotion at work, or pursuing that next phase in my business, or pursuing some more sex, or getting married, or having children. Maybe this is what I got to do first before I do all that other stuff. So what I recommend for you is to actually try this. Start with an hour if you're just new. You probably won't make it, but that's okay. You can fail at this. It's fine. I've failed many times at this. So how do you take it to the next level? How do you take your meditation to the next level? Here's another practical suggestion. Try to do a 1 hour sit totally motionless. The other thing I recommend, and this is something that I've just been experimenting with in the last couple weeks in my life, and it's been giving me incredible gains, mindfulness-wise, but also towards enlightenment. Do 4 1-hour sits per day. Do that for a whole week. That's basically a retreat right there. You could do it in your own comfort, the comfort of your own home. You don't need to go anywhere fancy or pay a lot of money for it. Just try this. Maybe try this on a weekend. Try it for just even 2 days. Try it for one Saturday and one Sunday. What this is you sit for 1 hour, doing whatever technique you want, meditation-wise. Just sit there for an hour. Then you can get up and have your meal and go to the bathroom and stuff. But then sit for another hour. Get up, do your stuff. Sit for another hour. Get up, do your stuff. Sit for another hour. Do that 4 times. What you're going to notice is that, man, this is just supercharges the meditation that I've been doing. If you've been only doing 20 minutes of meditation per day, try this for 1 weekend. See how much you're missing by not doing this more consistently. It's incredible what you get with really long, concentrated meditation sessions. All right, that's it. That's my assignment for you. Try some of these techniques out. Maybe combine this with some of the other techniques that I've taught you, like do nothing or self-inquiry, and you will be moving towards enlightenment pretty quickly. Also, you will be building your mindfulness muscles really quickly, and that's going to help you in all the ordinary, everyday situations in life. This is not just about proving how tough you are sitting on a cushion. This is really about being able to be happy in everyday life. All right, I'm signing off. Go ahead, post me your comments down below. Click the like button, please. Share this video with a friend. And lastly, come check out Actualized.org right here. This is my website. It's got a lot of free content on it. Also got some courses on it that you might find very useful. The reason I want you to follow along with Actualized.org, though, and there's a free newsletter there too, is that I'm really excited about delivering these deep insights, deep psychological insights that will help you to actually generate true happiness in your life. I want to help you to self-actualize. I want to help you to understand yourself and other human beings psychologically to degrees that almost nobody knows about. You're going to have a deeper and more powerful understanding of psychology than psychology professors do. If you take the information that I'm giving to you for free, if you take it seriously and you actually practice this and you take some action towards it and you apply this stuff and you stick around every single week for new episodes, I promise you that even just in a few years, you'll have a deeper understanding, not just conceptually and theoretically, but very practically. You will have both an understanding and also the ability to practice self-awareness and self-control in ways that virtually nobody on this planet knows. And this will give you powers that will seem magical to those around you. And this will allow you to construct whatever kind of life you want. With relationships, with your business, with money, with everything. But most importantly, with your mood. You're going to actually finally going to get tastes of true happiness, which is something that I'm really excited about having you experience. Anyways, sign up and I'll see you soon.